Baltimore 34, San Francisco 31. The Ravens have won the Super Bowl and have claimed the Lombardi Trophy for the second time in the past 12 years. Congratulations to the city of Baltimore and to these Ravens players. The analysis of the Super Bowl is up next on the NFL Goal Line with Nick Rice and Phil Nunziata.
Hello everyone and welcome live in the Southern California edition of the NFL Goal Line with Nick Rice and Phil Nunziata, live here on Spreaker.com in affiliation with National Sports. It's Nick Rice. We do not have Phil Nunziata again tonight. He is unable to join us here on the NFL Goal Line. We appreciate everyone that has joined us on this broadcast, and if you guys were expecting us to be live at 7 o'clock, we are just a little bit late here. We apologize for the delays, but the NFL Goal Line rolls on despite the end of the NFL season. We kick off with perhaps one of the greatest Super Bowls in the NFL all time. NFL history witnessed one of the great Super Bowls ever. That included an NFL record for the longest quarterback run, an NFL record tied for the longest kickoff return for a touchdown, and an NFL record that perhaps should not be bragged about. The only power outage in the Super Bowl was a 34-minute delay in favor of the Niners. There was really one of those situations where a heavyweight fighter that has gotten pounded, he's wobbly, he's uneasy, and he has gotten hit in the mouth consistently and is just a moment away from being out. There's the bell, and the fighter has one more fighting chance, a long delay, and that was all the Niners needed to fight back in this game. And you saw just on Sunday night how impressive that game was. The Niners lose it, though, in the waning seconds. And that was all I expected going into this game. Doesn't matter who wins the ball game. Of course, you would love to have Ray Lewis win that title. But, I mean, the youth of the Niners was really on display in this matchup in New Orleans. The Ravens come out firing. They have a big pop. And entering the third quarter, following a long Jacoby Jones touchdown kickoff return, it is a 28-6 contest, just an embarrassment for the San Francisco team. And the headlines were all about the Harbaugh brothers, the Harbaugh. And it really was a fight to the finish, following Kaepernick getting really some key mistakes, and that was really expected in a sense. You know, with the Ravens defense being so elite against guys like Tom Brady, Peyton Manning. You know, this team, we mentioned going into this broadcast last week on the NFL Goal Line that this team only allowed 17 points in the second half, all playoffs. That is less than a touchdown per game in the second half. Boy, that's an impressive feat when you're talking about guys like Andrew Luck, Tom Brady, and Peyton Manning. You've had to face against back-to-back-to-back weeks in the playoffs with a trip to the next round of the playoffs on the line. I mean, that alone is a very impressive mark. And the Ravens kind of let off the gas in the second half. And there's a mentality that you have. Harbaugh did a terrific job, I'm speaking of the Ravens, Harbaugh, of being able to rally his troops and allow that team to at least a fight following the power outage, because, you know, for that time, it was midway through the third quarter. You are just moments away, in a sense, from a Super Bowl championship, and when you have that long of a delay, it's very easy to let off the gas, even more than they did in that scenario. And as a play caller, also for John Harbaugh, it's very difficult to design plays that are conservative, yet still push the ball down the field and force the issue against the Niners. 3 runs up the middle on every offensive drive is not going to get it done. Sending 8 back in the defense is not going to get it done. The Ravens had a very impressive scheme. When they were up 28-6, they still dialed out the blitz. On offense, they were still back to the air. What impressed me is in the fourth quarter, with 8 or so minutes to go, on third down and less than a yard, Joe Flacco elects to pass the football. We'll go into the Joe Flacco contract situation later, but Flacco wins the MVP of the Super Bowl. and I felt like he was the most deserving. Now, runner-up, and I believe what was also a very impressive effort in today's game, or in Sunday's game, excuse me, wow, all off here. Anquan Bolden, very impressive game, but I would love to tip my hat off to Jacoby Jones. He only had one reception for 56 yards and a touch. That might be the reason why he doesn't win this ever elusive award, but his kickoff return really kick-started that second half. Momentum, emotion. In the second half, the Niners were going to go out firing. This is one of the, outside of the kicker debacle, this was a very stout defensive or special teams group. Not to mention, Jim Harbaugh made it into the NFL, starting as a special teams coach. He knows a thing or two about that position, about that side of the ball, and they were just flat out taken to him, especially in the first 2.5 quarters. Tip my hats off to John Harbaugh. 34-31 your final. Also, Joe Flacco, it's obvious. We don't even need a game ball. We don't even wait till the last couple minutes. The game ball goes to Joe Flacco in today's performance. Just an impressive aerial attack. The Ravens, 287 yards through the air with Joe Flacco. And despite the fact that he was only sacked once, and a lot of analysts, and they really have their right on this one, but there were several times where Flacco eluded the pocket, scrambled, made plays with his feet. Sounds like Kaepernick, doesn't it? Flacco making plays with his feet. He's a thick guy. He's another Ben Roethlisberger, Eli Manning type of guy. Not known for running the football, especially, but he can make plays with his feet, and Flacco eluded the blitz several times. And for a Niners defense, up front with the solid starting four on that defensive line, I'm surprised they only had one sack between all of them the entire game. That was just an impressive performance by this Ravens offensive line and by Flacco, eluding the blitz and making plays with his feet. We didn't expect him to make too many of those, but he made more than enough in Sunday night's contest. Ravens defeat the Niners 34-31. Nick Rice is the lone commentator tonight on the NFL Goal Line with Nick and Phil. And I just wanted to really quick point out a lot of it. I mean, there's a reason why NFL analysts do what they do for a living, and there's the teenager Twitter computer geek that wants to bash these NFL refs for making the worst call at the crucial moment. Michael Crabtree, quote-unquote, getting held on that play. But the officials, and I really tip my hats off. I've always been a fan of referees that really call a clean game. Not really call a clean game, but they let the players play, especially in the game's biggest moments. These guys have been playing this sport for a number of years. So to call the ticky-tack call really was not fair. And a lot of people did not really notice, but this was a very well-run, officiated game. This was a contest where there was, from the very beginning, it was obvious these two teams were going to fight it out to the end. There was a lot of extracurricular off the whistle activity. There was perhaps several times just one punch, one little shove away from somebody getting flagged for 15 yards. It was that chippy of a game. We had a helmet or two flying. We had fists thrown. We had some shoves here and there. We had some jawing after the play. Heck, both of these teams, in the very first play of the game, were getting it going, jawing on the sideline. This was a very hard-nosed, chippy game, and the refs just let them play. I was very impressed by just how much they let these guys play. They let these guys just play their game. And in that last play of the game, it's questionable whether really Michael Crabtree was held too much on that play. But I give my fault to Colin Kaepernick that airmailed that ball out of the back of the end zone. It was an uncatchable ball. Perhaps if it tips off Michael Crabtree's fingertips, it's another story. But the fact that it was 5 yards out of bounds, I blamed Kaepernick, who was 0 for 7 completions in the red zone and was flat out atrocious down inside the 10-yard line. I mean, it was appalling. In the first quarter, with the Niners driving, they could have tied the game at 7. Instead, they throw 2 incomplete passes, and Kaepernick, despite being rolled out, misses a wide-open Michael Crabtree. Very next play, doesn't see the blitz from Kruger and takes a 10-yard sack. Kick a field goal, and it's only a 7-3 contest. Ravens turn the next field position following an interception into a 14-3 contest, and then we just see how the snowball got bigger and bigger for this team. LaMichael James fumbles the ball. Ravens cash in 21-3. Niners are able to drive, and in the red zone, Kaepernick again 0 for 2 in the red zone and completing passes. 2 incompletions, and Akers has to kick a field goal. 21-6. Kickoff return makes it 28-6 in favor of the Ravens. And then later on, following a couple, I was very impressed inside the 20s. We knew this from when Kaepernick finally got the job as the Niners quarterback. Inside the 20s, Kaepernick is elite, but from the 20 to the red zone, I would take Alex Smith in the situation over Kaepernick. It's just inside that area, I trust a guy like Alex Smith who can make the big play. In the red zone, the smart play. Kaepernick 0 for 7 in that category. The Niners made it close. Michael Crabtree capped off the only scoring drive to that point that led for a touchdown. That was a 31-yard completion. And then turnover by Ray Rice leads to a Frank Gore touchdown run on a 6-yard carry. And then after some more offensive struggles for the Ravens, Akers cashes in with a field goal. Tucker gets a 19-yarder as well. But that was really where where the Niners really had some decision making to be had here. Colin Kaepernick caps off a drive with a 15-yard touchdown run. But as soon as that happens, in my mind, I'm screaming at the TV set, if the Niners don't get the Ravens off the field, this game is over. There is 2 minutes and change to play. Ravens trailing by a point, and they are driving. 3rd and 9, incomplete pass, but Culliver is flagged for a holding penalty defensively that leads to a 1st and 10. And then the following play, a big pass completion to Pitta, another 1st and 10. It just seemed like everything snowballed against the Niners defensively. I'll get into why exactly the struggles mounted for this team following this quick commercial break. The Niners were unable to cap it off. Ravens kick a field goal, and then after the Niners driving down the field, unable to get anything going following them crossing midfield, they have to punt, and the Ravens, it was just, everything happened for the Ravens seemingly in the 4th quarter. It turns out that the Niners drive all the way down the field, and then they each enter the red zone. Kaepernick 0 for 3 in the red zone, and that was really key in this game. There were a couple times where Kaepernick should have scrambled himself. There was an obvious opening in the Ravens' defense. They are 0 for 4 in converting anything into a Niner touchdown. And then the story is it from there. The Ravens burn out the clock. They get a safety. The Niners do. And with 4 seconds to play, nothing doing. We'll be right back to the NFL goal line with Nick Rice and Phil Nunziata. We're just getting started here. It won't be all Super Bowl analysis here following Super Bowl 47's action. We'll also take a look into the offseason and what team is most primed for a terrific draft. And we also have news on the Niners and their draft status, and the Ravens with their contract negotiations with quarterback Joe Flacco. We have all that and more coming up on the NFL goal line with Nick Rice and Phil Nunziata. Did you ever think that it would be thrilling to see all the great all-time franchises to match up in a simulation to determine the greatest team ever? Now you see the Ravens, you see the Niners, but how about seeing the all-time teams such as the Packers with their Lombardi trophy setting an NFL record in championships back to the Bart Starr days, the Niners with the Joe Montana days. Imagine if all the greatest players of all time match up for an all-time series to determine the greatest teams of all time. This is what we have with the DSFL called the Dream Season Football League. Log on to Facebook.com and also go to Facebook.com and it is a group called the DSFL2. It's facebook.com/group/Dream Season Football, no spaces there. DREAMSEASONFOOTBALL. Facebook.com/group/Dream Season Football to get you started with the all-time franchises. This is a season to determine the greatest teams of all time. Log on to Facebook for more information. The NFL Goal Line will continue following this word from your local station. We'll be right back after a quick 30. Stay tuned. There was a blackout 34-minute delay. Welcome back to the NFL Goal Line with Nick Rice and Phil Nunziata. For a city that is so much about partying, about staying up late, and about flat out it's called the Big Easy for a reason. I mean, this is a laid-back city that has had its fair share of partying and staying up late. There's New York, and then there's New Orleans. And this is also New Orleans, just throwing this here. New Orleans is a very passionate football city. Following the 2005 hurricane with Katrina crashing that city, devastating that town, and forcing these people to rally around Drew Brees and a team that just a few seasons ago was really regarded as the Aints, as a terrible franchise. They turn around and win a Super Bowl a few years later. Now they're hosting the 2013 Super Bowl. Boy, there's a lot of reasons why there was a delay here, why the lights just turned out in a big party city. Many could say there was some extra force that allowed that to happen. Some could say it's Beyonce and her impressive halftime performance. I mean, we're speaking of the last 10 years. Guys like Tom Petty. I mean, there was the Black Eyed Peas one year. This was a pathetic series for Super Bowl. I mean, flat out embarrassing. It was conservative. It was guys past their prime. It was the last that you heard of these guys. It was very sad to see some of these guys being thrown into the halftime. It was just kind of a waste of a halftime show. Beyonce was a very refreshing change. And boy, that was just a concert. It was a concert. I mean, there was some entertainment there, to say the least. I mean, I couldn't keep my eyes off of the halftime show. It was a terrific 20 minutes of just concert-like halftime singing. There was one song that I really didn't like. I mean, that's overplayed here. But other than that, I mean, it was song after song, just whipping out all of the impressive dancing moves that we've seen over the years. Beyonce is not past her prime. That was a very impressive performance. And that could be blamed for the power outage, but, I mean, there's a lot of speculation. But there was reportedly, before the Super Bowl, during rehearsals, Beyonce would experience power outages in that stadium. They rehearsed days earlier in New Orleans. I mean, wouldn't you think they would get something situated with that matter? I mean, it's just common sense in my mind. Power outage lasted 34 minutes. Hopefully we will not see something like that again. Reportedly, New Orleans is still in favor to have another big-time Super Bowl soon. The league is not making any sort of repercussions on the power outage there. Glad to see that New Orleans, one of the all-time football towns, perhaps one of the most passionate football cities in America, set to host another Super Bowl, perhaps in the coming years. Ravens have a decision to make. We've seen enough post-Super Bowl action, haven't we? Ravens have a decision to make in the offseason. They will be forced either to sign Flacco to a long-term deal, and believe me, when you win a Super Bowl following your contract year, there is some money in the making for Joe Flacco. The question is it in the form of a 6 to 7 year kind of deal for Flacco? He's a young 27-year quarterback in the early stages of his prime. You've seen a number of quarterbacks in a quarterback-driven league where you can't touch the thrower. We've seen a number of quarterbacks not only make the big money, but last past the age of 38 and 39, where for every other position, that is old. Look at Ray Lewis. Joe Flacco will make bank next year. Whether it's in a long-term deal with the Ravens, whether it's in a franchise tag with Baltimore, or whether it's through free agency. There are perhaps half the teams in the league that would likely consider making a run at Flacco, running off a few teams: the Bills, the Jets, Browns, maybe the Jaguars, Tennessee, Kansas City, Oakland, Philadelphia, Minnesota, Tampa Bay, and Arizona. Just a few of the teams that could make a case for Joe Flacco. But the big question here is, will the Ravens decide to make a long-term deal for Joe Flacco? Following that kind of performance, that the person in charge of the money for Flacco will obviously be looking for some cash, looking for something like a top 5 kind of quarterback deal, paid higher than he's paid in the top 5 quarterbacks in the league. In other words, he'll be looking for that kind of long-term deal. A franchise tag in this situation may not be the best decision for Baltimore. Personally, I would sign him to a long-term deal. We saw a quarterback class in Andrew Luck, Robert Griffin III, and Russell Wilson. We saw a quarterback class flourish. I don't want to forget Ryan Tannehill. We saw 4 to 5 quarterbacks start and make big-time success in the league in their rookie year. This is if you're a team that's like 7-9 or 8-8, let's look at the Jets, maybe the Chargers, a team like the Raiders, running off teams. I mean, Minnesota has its issues. Offensively, a very deep draft class. We will see players in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th round all over the place start in the NFL. I mean, this is a very deep class, except for one key position, quarterback. Now, there might be a team that takes him in the top 5, top 10, but I don't see, and same with a lot of NFL analysts, they don't see any of these quarterbacks making it in the top 5. It's not really a hot quarterback class. So for Baltimore, they don't have a quarterback to go to. It's a quarterback-driven league. Sure, they have to make a stretch to grab Flacco, make him one of the highest-paid quarterbacks in the league. Also, earlier this year, they signed Ray Rice to a long-term deal as well. So Flacco and the Ravens, if they make a deal, that might be the last offseason acquisition they make in the offseason outside of the draft, perhaps. But that's not really the big concern here, because the Ravens perhaps have outside of, we saw the Niners too, this is perhaps one of the best, and I want to give Ozzie Newsome, the general manager for the Ravens, some big-time credit. In just a few years, he turned this team into a Super Bowl champion, and that was just, it was a lot. I mean, it was very impressive. All the depth that the Ravens have. I mean, they are very, from top to bottom, elite. It is very impressive what Ozzie Newsome did in just a few years. Very tough decision for this man, but I believe they bring Joe Flacco back. Just looking at the quarterbacks that are set for free agency and are set for the draft, the Ravens, and they don't really have anything much to trade for. The Ravens have a number of draft picks. Perhaps they draft a late-round quarterback. That would be the only way why I would see the Ravens try to franchise tag this QB. But again, if you franchise tag him, then you are set having to pay Flacco between $14 million and $20 million based on the maximum salary cap of the 2013 season. Very risky maneuver for a team like Baltimore. We will see just what the Ravens do in this situation. As for the 49ers, 11 draft picks is upcoming for this team. Again, another very well-run organization, top to bottom, from player A to player Z. Just a very impressive, well-run team that also has perhaps the best well-run staff in the entire NFL. The Ravens made big news with letting go of Cam Cameron and hiring Jim Caldwell as their offensive coordinator. The Niners have their staff set. Start with Jim Harbaugh. Very impressive and well-run organization. The Niners have 11 draft picks. 11 draft picks. I don't think the Niners have 11 players from the draft that can start on that team next year. I don't think the draft has 11 players that could start on the team next year. Picks 1 to 11 in the first round. Very impressive. The only issue here is, and San Francisco has its money's worth, if they're able to keep Kaepernick in the building, they will be able to have a all-pro quarterback for the next 10, 12 years. There were a number of issues in the Super Bowl that really is a cause for concern. Green Bay a few years ago had a big-time weakness at offensive line. It was mix and match at that position. This team was not elite at running the football. It was mix and match at running back. They had Hall of Fame, future all-pro running backs. They even had James Starks for a while. This team has just been mix and match as far as the offensive line. And again, we go back to the draft. Their backers will be very lucky. They're very lucky to be in this situation. They could draft 2 or 3 offensive linemen from that draft that can start immediately in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round. Now, moving back to the Niners. We saw a weakness Sunday at defense. Boy, defense. San Francisco was top 10 in the league. Excuse me? Take a look here. Flacco, completely untouched for almost the entire game. A lot of that was that offensive line that was very impressive in today's game, in Sunday's game. But that defensive secondary is a huge cause for concern. Huge. It was underrated. It was overrated all year long. They have perhaps one of the most overrated safeties in the game in Dante Whitner. Carlos Rogers has been flushed around the National Football League, set with San Francisco, a very above-average cornerback. A lot of teams would love to have Carlos Rogers in their starting unit, but boy, it's just their secondary. If they don't address it in the draft, they have 11 picks. They will have to. But that was a huge weakness. And then Colin Kaepernick making too many bonehead decisions. Flacco, a veteran, has been to the playoffs a bunch of years. Didn't make the big mistake at the big time. Kaepernick, the entire game, just made bonehead decisions. 0 for 7 incompletions in the red zone, and made a costly interception, airmailing that pass over Randy Moss, and it was picked off by Ed Reed, who ties an NFL record with 9 postseason interceptions. Also give a hats off to the future Hall of Fame safety for Baltimore, Ed Reed. We'll be right back to the NFL goal line with Nick Rice and Phil Nunziata. There is a reason why the Ravens made it this far, and it starts with their terrific linebacker that was one of the greatest this season at stuffing the run. It was also very impressive in the passing game, making the big plays at linebacker. And I'm not speaking of Ray Lewis. More on that next. Welcome back to the NFL Goal Line live here in Southern California. This is Nick Rice. Phil Nunziata was unable to join us tonight. And we also have a call-in number. 951-515-4552 is the call-in number tonight if you guys want to join us live on the NFL Goal Line. This is Nick Rice bringing to you live everything to do with the National Football League. We'll give you the schedule right now. We'll also give it to you at the end of the show, but we will hopefully have an NFL Goal Line in 2 to 3 weeks. Next week we will not have NFL Goal Line. I'll give you the full details at the tail end of tonight's show. NFL Goal Line rolls on. And the big question following Sunday night's performance, is Joe Flacco elite? First of all, Flacco says he's a Raven for life. That's how I see it. Flacco made terrific plays in the postseason. And he's a guy that's similar to Eli Manning. A guy that in September when you're playing the Browns week 5, terrific weather, Flacco struggles. Eli struggles. In January, freezing cold temperatures on the road against a better football team, underdog, plays better than in Week 5 against Cleveland. It's unexplainable. It's the whole Giants as a team, and the Ravens are turning into that kind of team too, and that's just a terrific bragging point for Baltimore. A team that, for a number of years, every single season will be a team that is terrific. That a team that will always be close. They've been to the playoffs for the past 5 seasons. This is a team that will always seem to be close. Flacco sets an NFL record with the only quarterback to win a postseason game in each of his first 5 seasons. A statement to Flacco. In his rookie year, he was in the championship game. Second year, divisional round. Just very impressive. Flacco engineering a team that has been so hard-nosed for a number of years. Finally, this team is a little more balanced, and the offense is carrying this franchise finally. And also, Ray Lewis ends as his last game as a Raven and as a football player, ends with a goal line stand to win the Super Bowl. Boy, you can't get that script passed in Hollywood. Just a very, very impressive performance. And the question for Baltimore here is how will they be able to replace a guy? Well, first of all, Ray Lewis is not replaceable. A community leader, an on-the-field impact unlike any other, a loudmouth that provides a statement on the field, and in the pregame, there is just nothing like number 52 getting you ready for the game. Another reason why the Ravens were so strong defensively. Heck, they only allowed 17 points in the playoffs. I mean, is there anything more you can ask for this team? That's 5.5 points a game. I mean, for offenses that have put up 30, 40 points every week, 5 points a game, sheesh, in the second half. Donnell Ellerbe has been such an impressive linebacker for the Baltimore Ravens, an up-and-coming star. He led the team in tackles in the Super Bowl. Everything was on Ray Lewis. But boy, Donnell Ellerbe, he was very impressive. At the age of 27, Ellerbe is set to be a part of that team for a while. He was second on the team with 92 tackles this season. Also led the team in the Super Bowl with 6 tackles. Very impressive run stopper for this team. The offense carried this team. And I'm very impressed on a team that is up and coming, going to be very elite. Ed Reed is back for another year, but the story on defense, Donnell Ellerbe will be back. Haloti Ngata will be hopefully back. Boy, that injury in the Super Bowl was very gut-wrenching for a team like Baltimore, suffering with the injury plague all year long. Haloti Ngata was injured in the third quarter, falling on a 6-yard touchdown run by Frank Gore. Haloti Ngata left the game after injuring his knee and did not return. After the game, the doctors did not determine whether or not he suffered ligament damage. Quote from Haloti Ngata, "I'm just happy our younger guys were able to step up and do their part." He's speaking of guys like Joe Flacco, Ray Rice, Torrey Smith. I mean, these are all guys that will be a part of this team for a number of years. Again, a very well-run team and a very well-run organization led by Ozzie Newsome. A guy like Dennis Pitta, I also want to give my hats off to him. He didn't light up the stat board, but this is a guy that was in the shadows of a guy like Todd Heap, if you remember him. I mean, they just draft so well. Dennis Pitta was drafted, not many people know this, in the 4th round with the 109th pick. Guess who picked at the 110th pick? New England Patriots, drafting Rob Gronkowski. Not many people know that. NFL Goal Line rolls on here. Another quick commercial break, but we'll be right back. We have who will win the Super Bowl next year. And also, we have a free agency buzz. What team will make the big impact in free agency? And the big question of the night. What was the best Super Bowl commercial? The NFL Goal Line rolls on. Nick Rice, lone commentator here in Southern California's Spreaker.com, affiliation with National Sports. NFL Goal Line rolls on right after this. Quick 30 seconds. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the NFL Goal Line. Nick Rice being the lone commentator here. We are live on the NFL Goal Line in affiliation with National Sports. Spreaker.com's presentation of the NFL Goal Line. We are set to wrap up here, but we will bring you our final thoughts. Super Bowl commercials were terrific for the main part. I believe that, personally, I mean, there were a number of commercials that were terrific. Ravens win it, though, 34-31. I mean, there's been a number of off-season talk so far. Ever since the postseason rolled on, there were 8 head coaches that found new homes in the NFL. They'll be set to make their mark next season. The NFL draft is perhaps offensively one of the most heavy-loaded teams, especially on the offensive line. Two offensive linemen. Jake Matthews, the main man for the... he was expected to be taken top 5 in the NFL draft. He's back into college. 2 guys are set to make their mark in their final year at the NCAA ranks. But this draft is so heavily loaded, especially on offense, that teams like the Jets, teams like the Chargers, maybe the Eagles, teams that are really in need of an offensive weapon, perhaps wide receiver as well. There are a number of terrific guys that can make an early impact in the NFL draft. Ravens win it, though, 34-31 in the Super Bowl. I'll give my final thoughts here. And looking at the stat board, it really doesn't show the kind of struggles San Francisco had. Offensively, they had over 100 yards production on the ground with Frank Gore, 2 100-yard receivers, and a 300-yard passer. The only team in NFL history with that kind of mark to lose the Super Bowl. San Francisco headed into this game as the heavy favorites, but the key issue from the very get-go of the game was on defense, their inability to stop Joe Flacco in this passing attack. It's the secondary that really did not make any plays. Now, statistically, Flacco only 280 yards through the air. Now, that's not the same production as we got from Kaepernick. But the key was that Flacco made plays with his feet and had huge time to make the throws down the field. And the defensive secondary did not contain these receivers. Now, I want to give the offensive line for the Ravens a lot of credit, and I want to give their receivers a lot of credit as well. They have Bolden, Jones, Dixon, Torrey Smith, and Dennis Pitta, 5 reliable receivers down the field. It's very hard to cover those wideouts, but boy, it really showed from the get-go when the Ravens smacked their first play of the game, or their first drive of the game, as a touchdown, a 55-yard touchdown drive. Right from the get-go, the Niners were on their heels. 34 points up just shows the struggles that they had in the biggest game of the year, and it was just too much to overcome. It's the classic cliche of the team that is old and wise, just has all the answers against the young and inexperienced San Francisco 49ers. I want to give San Francisco credit. And in the offseason, it is expected with a 1-5 chance that the Niners will be right back in the Super Bowl next season. And that's not a stretch. That's not a stretch. This team is very young. It's poised. It's confident. Last year, they went to the NFC Championship game. This year, they were just one incomplete pass away from winning the Super Bowl. It's just one of those situations where they need to shore up a side of the ball. This is the defensive secondary that has really been overlooked all year long, but made crucial mistakes when the stakes were at its highest. Also, Colin Kaepernick, 0 for 7 in the red zone. His performance was, at times, impressive. he made plays between the 20s that were flat out remarkable. But he was just overshadowed by a guy like Joe Flacco. Interesting how I put Montana in there. Flacco, is he called elite? Boy, I really think so. 11 TDs to 0 picks in this year's playoffs. That's enough to me to call him the best quarterback in the league today. I think it's a stretch to call him a top 5 quarterback right now. Now, I know we've seen 5 years of this quarterback, but there is just too much yet to be seen. And let's not forget, this offense was abysmal, especially the last month of the regular season, led by Joe Flacco. This team lost 4 of its final 5 games against teams that were really below average. Their only win was against the Giants, an impressive victory. We'll be right back to the NFL goal line. We're wrapping up here, but we'll bring you all the top storylines around the National Football League. Stay tuned after this quick break. Thank you guys for listening to the NFL goal line, and we'll be right back. NFL headlines in the off season, and also our upcoming schedule on the NFL goal line, brought to you live on the NFL goal line's National Sports on Spreaker.com. Welcome back to the NFL goal line with Nick Rice, and unfortunately we were unable to have Phil Nunziata join us here live, but we hopefully will have him back next time that we have a show here. I mentioned next time because there is a number of NFL headlines during the regular season that we will... the NFL is slowed down. It's obvious. The NFL slows down during the off season, but boy, it's a very memorable 2012 season. I'm actually, boy, we've been lucky as football fans to have such a terrific sport. The Super Bowl, a 34-minute delay in the broadcast due to the power outage, and the ratings were higher than ever. During the final game of the World Series, Game 7 of those World Series, there was a 7 on the TV rating. LeBron James against Kobe Bryant, a 15 TV rating. During the 34-minute power outage in New Orleans, a 49 TV rating. Boy, the Super Bowl is just like nothing else. It's football, and it's why it's been the most popular sport in America for quite some time. And there was a number of storylines throughout the entire 2012 season. Adrian Peterson coming back from ACL and MCL surgery just 9 months later, measly months later, comes back and is 9 yards short of an NFL record, but does capture the NFL MVP, Most Valuable Player of the Year award. Very impressive. Peyton Manning, coming back from neck surgery, has the Comeback Player of the Year. We had the replacement officials. That blown game in Green Bay with the Seattle Seahawks being the victors in that game. Epically called the Fail Mary in Week 3. Perhaps one of the greatest games in the 2012 season. The referees come back, and the Falcons continued their very impressive run. We saw NFL records go down with Johnny Unitas being passed by Drew Brees. Brees now throwing the most single game touchdowns all time consecutively. His record stopped at 50. RG3 was a spectacular player. He captured the Rookie of the Year honors in the 2012 season. We had the Comeback of the Year with the Broncos coming back from down 24 over the San Diego Chargers to win that game. Boy, what a disappointment for the Chargers in a season to forget. Chuck Strong was up and running over in Indianapolis. Boy, that was a very, very easy to watch headline for the Colts. And it was the backup, you could say, head coach Bruce Arians that led that team with a 9-3 record to the postseason. From a team that was first in the NFL draft the year before. Very impressive year for the Indianapolis Colts. Speaking of comebacks, football is just such a terrific sport. We saw the first tie in a number of years. The Niners and the Rams produced the first tie game since 2008 in Week 10 of the 2012 season. And in that matchup, we did see Colin Kaepernick. Boy, what a hot season for him. He was the hot Rookie of the Year. Well, you could call rookie. Second-year player from the University of Nevada. The Jets went from bad to worse with Mark Sanchez running to his own blocker. That started one of the worst losing streaks I've seen in a while. Hey, diddle diddle, Ray Rice up the middle. Boy, it was a terrific catch and run for Ray Rice. 4th and 29, that was the play of the year. Very impressive performance in Week 12 of the 2012 season. The Chiefs reached tragedy with Javon Belcher committing suicide at Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City before Week 13. A very emotional season for the Chiefs following that tragic outcome. We had the three quarterbacks. That was just an impressive performance. The rookies. But it was the Chiefs overcoming the ex-rookie Cam Newton in that game. Very impressive performance. Megatron setting an NFL record with 1,964 yards in a single season, eclipsing Jerry Rice as the all-time yards in a single season receiver in the NFL. Ray Lewis having its last dance in the wild card round. The Baltimore Ravens eventually winning the Super Bowl. Ray Lewis in his final ride. And it began a very impressive series for the Baltimore Ravens, also defeating the Broncos in overtime and perhaps one of the greatest playoff games that I've ever seen. Kaepernick also on the other side, just beginning with this Niners team. And that was their road to the Super Bowl as well, if you may say. But Jacoby Jones, we entered the Super Bowl, another record-setting performance, tying an NFL record in the Super Bowl with a 108-yard kickoff return for a touchdown, and going out on top. The Ravens winning the Super Bowl 34-31. 2012 season in review. The most memorable moments of the NFL season. We have NFL Goal Line wrapping up here. Phil Nunziata unable to join us. But it's Nick Rice bringing you everything around the National Football League. We hopefully will have Phil Nunziata sooner rather than later. I'm just going to make a date right now. We aren't going to do the NFL Goal Line. We are trying to keep it as a once a month or a couple times a month ordeal. We can't do it every week. But we're trying to bring you everything around the National Football League as well. The off season is still a very high-paced time. We have free agency. We first got us off with pro days, training camps, scouting combines. Perhaps one of the greatest performances from bottom to top I've seen is Jake Johnson, the upcoming first rounder from the University of Alabama, offensive lineman there. We also have the NFL draft, of course, free agency. I mean, this is just a very high-paced year. Free agency won't be that hot, but the NFL draft, boy, if there's any year a must-watch for the NFL draft on the last week of April, it's this year. Boy, the guys that will be taken off the board, future NFL superstars. This is a very packed draft. And this is excluding two of the top offensive linemen in the country. Sorry for the background noise here. The NFL Goal Line is wrapping up here. Sending you guys a date. The NFL Goal Line will resume 3 weeks from today. February 26th. We'll have you guys back to bring you everything in the month of February, along with the National Sports NFL Goal Line Year in Review. Make sure to tune in to Spreaker.com's National Sports, as we will bring you everything around the National Football League and everything around the world of sports, rather. And that will just be the beginning of all that we will do here on Spreaker.com's National Sports. NFL Goal Line is wrapping up here on a Tuesday night, 2 days following the Super Bowl. We'll give our game balls to the best Super Bowl commercial. And I saw all of them. I saw perhaps 90 to 95% of them. Excuse me. And the NFL Goal Line would like to give its game ball commercial of the Super Bowl to the Oreo commercial. Very entertaining Super Bowl commercial. Boy, we've never ended with audio of a commercial. But I would like to leave you guys with the audio of the Super Bowl Oreo commercial. Boy, that was just a very entertaining ad that Oreo sent out for the Super Bowl viewers. NFL Goal Line wraps up here on a Tuesday night. We leave you with the Oreo commercial, the big Super Bowl reel of the Oreo commercial. Thank you guys for watching. NFL Goal Line is officially in the books. Nick Rice and Phil Nunziata will be back 3 weeks from tonight on February 26th to bring you everything in the month of February on the NFL Goal Line. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in 3 weeks.